When you say you have to be happy, that is a paradox. 100% external validation is important because creativity is that spark. The actual putting out of the product is hard work. If there's a spike, there has to be a drop. Stop expecting happiness. So you will have low days, there you will have high days. No one friend can fulfill all of your friendship requirements. As you fall more and more in love, you start thinking of the other person as a part of you. Handle love with care. Like don't fall that much in love. What did I do wrong? Let me change my behavior. What is the neuroscience of a happy place? Because I want to share my enthusiasm, my feeling of wonder with other people.
So, on today's episode of Jamsters, I am joined by a neurologist and a YouTuber who actually found that just being a medical practitioner is not cool enough. So, he wanted to be a content creator as well. I'm talking about none other than Dr. Siddharth Warrior. Welcome on Jamsters, buddy. It's a pleasure to finally be able to do this.
Thank you, Hardik. I know it's been a lot of back and forth. We've been trying to plan this for the last 1, 2 months. I'm glad that I'm here. I'm glad we're finally doing this.
Siddharth, I mean, it's interesting that you don the hat of already being a medical practitioner. Many people sort of move away from that role once they take on newer roles. That takes a
Mhm.
backseat. But in your case, you are still practicing. You're still being a doctor. You're still treating patients. How are you managing these multiple hats here? Let's dig into that a little bit.
So for me, I'm very aware that everything that I'm getting out of being a content creator and being a social media, uh, somebody being on social media, sharing my experiences and views, comes from the fact that I am a practicing doctor. So for me, that's the base. I don't think I can ever move away from that. It has always been the plan to, practice as a neurologist, try and help people. What is important for me is that while I do that, doing that shouldn't mean that I'm going away from what I would personally want to do. So I don't like
Hmm.
this idea of either or, that you can only pick one. So I'm quite adamant in trying to make sure that both my professional and my personal interests are being met. And it is a bit of extra work. I do accept that, but I think it's worth it.
That makes a lot of sense. I think, especially when the access to opportunities get accelerated by being exposed to platforms like these, I think it becomes an inherent dopamine hit to just constant get like validation and the appreciation, and also in the process help people as well. And I completely am aware that this has accelerated your medical practice as well, right? I think it has probably given you greater reach, greater
Mhm.
acceptability with your patients as well. Tell me, life before social media, being a content creator, and life after that. I know this is not like one point answer.
Mhm.
This is a progression of things, but what was life before and after this?
So, as far as my medical practice is concerned, there isn't a lot of difference, except that now, probably 1 in 10 patients, after the consultation is over, while they're leaving, they would just turn back and say, "Oh, by the way, I saw your YouTube video and I really liked it." So that's always it's a nice addition to my practice. So I've started enjoying that because
Hmm.
it's a great feeling to know that somebody has looked you up. And this is, by the way, a very common practice, especially in like 2022, in the younger crowd. You will Google your doctor before you visit them,
Absolutely.
right? And when you search for me online, you will find everything that I've done online. So it is natural that they will do that. It's natural that they will then go into my YouTube channel, go into my Instagram feed, and come across whatever it is that I'm talking about. So this hasn't impacted my practice itself, but
Hmm.
it has impacted my experience of the practice. So for
Interesting.
patients, I feel it's they come into the consulting room already feeling like they know me a little, which is a
Hmm.
big advantage.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. And
Yep.
does that make you as a better practitioner? As the matter of fact, you share a lot of information outside, so you also need to be updated with a lot of knowledge too, or is it just like since you've already been doing this for a long time, now this
Mhm.
comes as a second-hand nature to you to just share it as it goes along?
Yeah, so it's the latter. Most doctors who have been through like a government hospital, we are already in that mindset of teaching. We
Mm.
already are used to teaching our juniors, used to teaching taking clinics for our staff, our nurses. So we are in the habit of simplifying complex topics and making it, accessible to people. And when you are sitting in front of a patient, you do have to explain to them what is going on, and they can't understand technical lingo. So
Hmm.
they also want to hear about it in as simple a way as possible. So for me, transitioning to social media was the easy bit, because it was just
Hmm.
saying what I'm saying in the consulting room, but just saying it in front of a camera.
Now, I want to
um
don also the creator's hat for you, because
mhm,
you sort of say that you are a YouTuber, but you've also got a very Instagram active presence as well.
mhm.
Um, did you choose one medium over the other when you were at the outset of building your repertoire of content? Was that a conscious choice? If yes, what? If no, why?
Not really a conscious choice between the two. For me, I was always on Instagram, but it was mainly a place where I share photographs of my travel and poetry. That was mainly what Instagram was for initially. When the whole YouTube thing started and I started live streaming, I think it was Tanmay Bhatt who told me that you should live stream, and I just took his advice. I just because he said so, I just started it, and that really did help me, because there are things that you can only say at on a bigger platform, and YouTube was
Hmm.
that. At that time, Instagram didn't have the Reels concept. They had
Hmm.
IGTV, and I wasn't
Hmm.
really a big fan of that, because I was in my view, if you're going to put up a 4 to 5 minute video, YouTube was the place to do it, not
True.
Instagram. People are
True.
not on Instagram to watch 5 minute long videos. But
Hmm.
then when Reels came in, I realized that you can give snippets of information in 30 to 60 seconds. So
Hmm.
I actually had a lot of fun exploring how can you break down a complex topic into 60 seconds. So I really
Very
enjoyed
interesting.
experimenting with Reels.
Very cool, man. Very cool. So when Tanmay mentioned that you should start live streaming, what was the idea? What were you live streaming essentially? And did that bring in inhibition for you? Because I think you were not essentially a public person, right? I think social media made you as a public person, if I could say that, maybe, or give you greater access to a platform to get your voice out.
Hmm. Hmm.
Was that a barrier for you when you started live streaming? Because it's a very raw form of engagement with the direct audience.
Right.
There are no filters. You are being yourself, and especially when you compare a lot on social, which is very filtered, edited, high quality.
Yep.
Did that bring in some preconceived notions for you?
It was very interesting because, in a way, I felt that live streaming was the 2022 equivalent of being on stage.
Hmm.
Being in front of a live audience and you're talking, you're sharing something with them, their reactions are impacting you in real time. So it is the modern day equivalent of being live on stage, which for me wasn't that new, because I've always grown up performing on stage either with music or through poetry. So I have performed at multiple platforms across the country, and I am comfortable being on stage. So because of that one factor, live streaming didn't seem that foreign to me. It still felt okay, especially because of the love and support that I got from the audience. I can't explain to you how important that was. Because if you're dealing with a hostile group, it's a completely different thing. But if you're dealing with a group of people who want to talk to you, that is an absolute game changer, because you can be yourself and feel accepted. So it was, in a way, a very healthy relationship at the start, because it was me trying out something new, but the audience was also trying out something new, and we were both supporting each other.
So what were you live streaming though? What content were you live
So there
streaming?
were two things I was live streaming about initially. One was core neuroscience. I would take a topic like anything. It could be like jealousy, it could be love, relationship, and I would just break down the neuroscience behind it. Certain mental health stuff like depression, anxiety, panic attacks. What is the neuroscience behind it? And the other thing was about learning, because I was very passionate about how students should learn and how we never stop learning. Even if you're 35, 45, 55, you're just learning different things, but you are still learning. So, what is the science behind learning? So, I had this entire series called Learning to Learn, where I would call different guests. I had Tanmay, I had Vidit Gujarati, who's a chess grandmaster,
Hmm.
and I had multiple people come on the stream and talk about how they learned stuff. And it was very fascinating because, some of them have been your typical academic, going to school, going to college, studying hard. Others have never gone to school. others have never, attended formal education. All of them equally successful in their own way. So it just made it very interesting how learning can happen in so many different ways, and there's no wrong or right way to do it. So that's what I
Interesting.
was streaming about initially.
And generally, as a creator, people tend to often find a content market fit, the
Hmm.
things that resonate most with the audience, right? That's the essential struggle for most of the creators in terms of understanding what essentially hits, and finally that's what they want to keep on doing eventually. um, was there a content market fit study for you, or you were already experimenting, you already knew your space, you did not want to experiment, you figured out? What was your process like?
That's a great question, actually. Mm, for me, the key word that kind of kept me going was that neuroscience is everything.
What do you mean by that?
Take any life experience of yours, anything that you have ever experienced that has interested you in any way, there is a neuroscientific basis for that. Why did you enjoy it? Why did you feel that way? Why did you dislike it? Why would you want to do it again? There is a neuroscientific basis for it. And I felt it was fascinating for me to explore that and also see that light of recognition in other people's eyes when they realize, oh, this is why I felt this way. And it's like a little bulb going on in your
That
head.
aha moment.
That aha moment, exactly. So if you look back at your favorite song, why do you like it? Why do you keep humming it? When you close your eyes and I tell you, imagine your happy place, there is a certain vision that will come to your mind. There'll be certain faces that come to your mind. Why did that happen? What is the neuroscience of a happy place? It's just something that you don't think about, but then as soon as you start thinking about it, there is this aha moment. I love that. So even when I'm reading a research article, I wait for that aha moment for myself. And as soon as I get that, that's what my next reel will be about.
Hmm.
Because I want to share my enthusiasm, my feeling of wonder with other people. So there is no market fit per se. Anything that makes me go, wow, is the market fit for me.
Hmm. And when did you start sort of getting collab opportunities, or being outside of the medical fraternity and talking about applications of neuroscience in other spaces like marketing? So I remember when we ran into each other at the Brands and Entertainment Conference. So you were speaking with Tanmay there.
Yep.
And this was essentially around people, audience who were primarily marketers, ad agency guys, creator
Yep.
economy folks, right? And here you are talking from the hat of neuroscience there, which completely
Right.
got people in rapt attention. So
Right.
when did you start seeing the repercussions of this, that this is not just a medical thing, this has
Hmm.
ramifications in the other spaces too?
So this was a gradual realization. My first step outside of the medical field in terms of neuroscience was on relationships and mental
Okay.
health. So mental health still has an overlap because
True.
anxiety, depression were still core medical topics, but they slightly start merging into your everyday. Because are we talking
Hmm.
anxiety disorder or are we talking anxiety? Because everybody
True.
gets anxious. So as we understand the neuroscience of anxiety disorder, we gradually understand the neuroscience of anxiety itself. And then you start understanding personalities. And then you start understanding behavioral patterns. We go into psychology. And then we go into relationships. We start understanding group psychology. And from there, we understand why do people buy the way they do? Why do they shop the way they do? Why do they like certain advertisements? Why do they not like certain advertisements? Why do they like certain brands? Why do they not like certain brands? So it feels like a gradual progression from one field to another where you are exploring the neuroscience behind that. I don't remember really the tipping point as to what got me into it. I did a course on neuromarketing just out of interest. It was on, I found it on Coursera, and it blew my mind.
Hmm.
Because of how simple it can be when you understand why people behave the way they do. And then I read a lot about it. In fact, I took a workshop of my own on neuromarketing.
Hmm.
And then I did a couple of live streams with Tanmay, and that's what led me to the brands and entertainment event.
Very cool. When you are also a practitioner of your subject as a
Mhm.
practicing doctor,
Mhm.
um, now on the content creator hat, you are not only getting your revenues from, example, YouTube ad streams, right?
Mhm.
YouTube AdSense, but also you are taking courses. So what are the other revenue mechanisms you figured out as a creator outside of being
Mhm.
a practitioner?
So, very honestly, it's not something I pay a lot of attention to. For me, I am still primarily a practicing neurologist. And so all of my finances in my head are still from there. Whatever I get from social media, I consider it as a bonus, and most of it gets put right back into it, uh, either in terms of paying for better editors, paying for a better mic or a better camera, like just make the whole experience of social media more comfortable for me and my audience. I still don't look at it as a source of earning or a source of revenue. I think the reason is that I don't want to start thinking about it in terms of I haven't earned my monthly quota from social media. I
Okay, this
don't
is a
want that
very
in my mind.
important point. This is a
Yeah.
very, very important point. I think many of the creators who were born on social
Hmm.
media
Hmm.
found their recognition on social media. For them, the world is social.
Right.
And the branching out of revenue streams happen because of social.
Right.
When a real world practitioner, like a medical practitioner or an engineer or someone else, uses that leverage
Hmm.
to bring on social,
Hmm.
their world of living is not dependent on social,
Correct.
right? And I think that's a very stark difference, because the reason why I wanted to bring this up is mental health has been a big problem for creators in particular, who are thriving off social in particular, right?
Yeah.
Who continuously create content for social because that's where they earn their primarily living from.
Right.
Burnout is a very, very real issue, especially among creators and creative people in general, like creatively
Right.
inclined people in general.
Right.
um, I would love for you to unpack, a, how is it that creator burnout or artist burnout can be avoided? Because that's
Hmm.
something that would be of a particular interest, not only to our listeners but to me as well, because I've been through those situations where it's essentially been like I need a break, but you can't. The hamster wheel just has to keep on running. You've
Right.
got to keep performing. You've got to be happy. You can't let your energy levels down because you are a public person. That's where everyone wants to see you as. Tell me a little bit more about that, please.
It is difficult. You have to accept that right at the right at the start. When you say you have to be happy, that is a paradox, because as soon as you're forcing yourself to be anything, the chances are that happiness isn't really going to come out of it. The way that the neural networks of happiness is structured is, you need to have a certain level of unpredictability, you need to have a certain level of surprise, and it is not sustainable. That feeling of dopamine spike, which is what we call happiness, isn't sustainable. If there's a spike, there has to be a drop. Biochemically, there has to be a drop, and if we are not comfortable with that, then we will keep chasing that high, and that has negative consequences. So for me personally, I have a stopped expecting happiness.
What does
This
that mean?
sounds very philosophical,
Hmm.
but don't do it to be happy,
Hmm.
right? Don't Happiness will come. You are Have a different purpose, not happiness, because happiness is not something that you can aim for. You can aim for other things, and happiness can be a natural byproduct of that. So you could aim to create, you could aim to get better, you could aim for anything else but happiness. Happiness just comes. This is just my perspective, okay? This is just the way I work. So for me, that makes it easier, because there will be days where you're frustrated, but that
True.
doesn't mean that your plan is going wrong.
Hmm.
But if your plan was to be happy, then the days that you're being frustrated means that something is wrong. But it isn't. It's a natural biochemical up and down that happens in your brain. So you will have low days, there you will have high days. It doesn't reflect on your personal capabilities. So that's step one for me. Once I've come to terms with that, life gets a little easier. Step two, as far as creativity is concerned, you also need to understand that creativity also goes up and down.
Hmm.
Get used to it. Get used to your own rhythm, your own pattern. So if you have creative hours, then create during those hours and rest during the times when you're not creative. If some people have creative days, some people have creative weeks, make the best of it. Try to note down as much as you can, because creativity is a spark. The actual putting out of the product is hard work. So if you're feeling creative, note down all your ideas, be as creative as you can, and leave the hard work part for it for the moment when you're not feeling creative, when you just have to sit, put your head down, and work. So I try to think of it as two separate aspects of creativity. One is the fun, exciting, brilliant part, where you are like, yes, oh my God, I'm brilliant. The other one is, you know what? It doesn't matter if I'm brilliant or not. I need to write the script. I need to shoot the video. I need to edit the video. I need to upload the video. All this isn't creative stuff. You don't feel wow doing all of this,
True,
but somebody has
true.
to do it. So I try to divide myself into creative, non-creative, and then assign each one their respective roles.
Okay, quick question. Bursts of creativity or discipline?
Are you asking me which one I prefer? What is the
Yeah,
question?
yeah. Like which one do you pick of the two? Bursts of creativity or discipline?
Oh, can't pick, dude. It's, I mean, if your final depends on what you're going for. If you're chasing that dopamine spike, always burst of creativity, because you feel happiest after that creative burst. But if what you're chasing is final outcome, then you have to be disciplined. You can't have it otherwise. So for example, let's take something simple. Suppose you have this plan of doing 60 reels in 60 days. No amount of creative spark is going to let that happen if you don't have discipline.
Sustainability, basically. It won't sustain if you just
Sustainability.
purely rely on creativity, right?
Exactly. So you need to find a different motivational locus apart from happiness, because you're not going to be happy. Let's be very honest. It's like going to the gym for 3 months. You are not going to be happy every day. You will hate it at certain points. So that cannot be the reason why you're going. There has to be a different reason. And you have to spend a lot of time thinking long and hard about what is that reason. And once that is clear, things become easier.
So I want to unpack a couple of things. One is about not chasing happiness and happiness being the byproduct.
Hmm.
That sort of puts this into perspective, at least in my head. A parallel is that you can only control the input variables and not the output variable. Happiness becomes the output variable. So what you
Correct.
can control is the effort, the process, whatever things that are making, or at least on the track to make you happy. So, for example, if making the content is making you happy, uh, getting virality becomes a dopamine hit in spite of whether you have success or not, because you enjoyed the process of making the reel,
Right.
right?
Right.
In the world where we are constantly looking for social validation, external validation, I
Yeah.
want to first um, also challenge this presumption in my head as well, that is external validation all right to have, right? Or
Hmm.
is it all internal? Should I just be like, I know my process, I know the work that I'm doing, I know my discipline, I know I will create the reels, screw whether it's
Hmm.
something goes viral or not, I will keep on putting the material. That is one angle of looking at it. Second is,
Hmm.
because my audience wants it, they expect something good quality out of me, I have to ensure that they are happy in the process, so they need to be happy. Is there a line that you draw between the two? If not, what is it?
I don't think there is a right and wrong here,
Sure, sure. I'm just asking for a
but
perspective from you. Yeah.
yeah, but 100% external validation is important. The reason I'm saying that is because we are wired that way. The human brain is wired to look for external cues. Right from the time a baby is born, the baby will look towards the mother, the father, the siblings, to figure out if what that baby is doing is right or wrong. He or she will try to copy the mannerisms. When sometimes when the baby is a little older, you'll notice that the baby will cry, but if nobody is looking, then it'll stop crying, and then it'll cry a little louder. And then when people start looking, it'll cry even louder, because now, okay, he or she's got their attention. There is a lot of looking for external cues. You never outgrow that. You're always looking around to see if, did I do something right or did I do something wrong? How else would you know? Because inherently there is no right and wrong. Right and wrong is only based on consequences, and consequences are 99% of the time decided by other people. If not for physics, most of the consequences that we face in life are decided by other people. So we are wired to look for external cues to decide what we should do, how we should behave. Absolutely nothing wrong in that. In fact, I embrace it.
Okay,
If
so
somebody,
let me
yeah,
interject there.
yeah,
People in the entertainment business, media business, events business, show business are some of the people who experience massive bouts of loneliness and depression.
yeah,
Okay,
right,
and there is a
right,
reason to that. One of the things that I've come to understand is because their happiness depends on external cues. Their
right,
happiness depends on approval from people. Now that
correct.
approval can never be contained by your actions entirely. It is
Hmm,
very random. You might take 5 years to create a piece of art and that can completely be shit, according to the audience, but for you it's a massive masterpiece. But someone who could make a reel in 1 minute and put it out could be a massive hit and give instant virality.
right.
My thing I'm trying to understand and why I'm trying to also unpack this question is because uh, every time a dopamine hit comes in, when a viral work comes into place, it gives us a validation that, oh, I'm good. It might
Hmm,
not necessarily be true in objective sense. You might not be good. It might have worked in the favor of the algorithm. You might have kicked off and you became successful because of that result. The sustainability is a problem, right? You can't
hmm,
make your happiness, which is why I'm trying to question that and I challenge that perspective. You saying that you're 100% on board for external validation, but I'm here trying to understand that if my external validation becomes the only way to live,
hmm,
it's a scary situation to be in, because like I said, people in the business are constantly harping on the fact that, oh, I've got x million views, x billion views, and that is
correct.
still less because you're constantly comparing, oh, he got or she got more, and there is no
Yeah,
end to that. I'm trying to
yeah,
understand, is there a way to bypass this? Is there a way to have your locus of control within you and not
yeah.
outside of you?
Absolutely. So this is the whole don't put your all your eggs in one basket scenario of identity. If your entire identity is placed on one variable, then you always run the risk of losing that variable and thereby losing your identity. And that could be anything. If somebody's entire identity is that they are rich, and if for some reason they lose all their money, the reason that they go through the reason this is so traumatic is because not only are they now struggling for practical reasons, they've lost their identity. So losing identity is a very traumatic thing. So if your identity is that other people love you, then you run the risk of losing their identity if something goes wrong, which is why you should have different your identity should be a lot bigger than just one variable, and there should be some aspect of your identity which is completely yours, independent of everything else, where even if you're left alone on an island, you still have that. So if you are you a Harry Potter fan?
Not as crazy as other people are, but sure, I mean, I
Sure.
appreciate. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the story. So there is this concept of horcruxes.
Okay.
So Voldemort puts little pieces of himself into different items so that he can never be killed. I
Hmm.
thought, what a wonderful metaphor for identity. So most people can be killed with just one spell because they are all they have. But Voldemort was smart enough to keep different parts of himself in different items so that he can never really be killed until all those things were destroyed. So we should try to do what Voldemort did without being that evil. We should try to have different horcruxes of identity
Hmm.
where okay, so I'm a doctor, and now suppose something goes wrong there, and for some reason, God forbid, I can never practice again. I have another identity. I still write poetry. I still have my social media. I still have a family that I love and support and who loves and supports me. There are different ways in which you can look at yourself. Only if all of that is gone and I completely feel very differently about myself, will I lose my entire identity. And this is true for everyone. Each and every single person can think about different horcruxes for themselves.
So here's what I'm trying to look at from the perspective of application.
Hmm.
Um, when, let's say, for example, I as a performing artist
Hmm.
use voiceovers,
Hmm.
anchoring, and podcasting as a way to use my knowledge and share it with the people. So I'm not identifying with one thing in particular according to the logic that you're telling. Now,
Mm.
outside of this, I would say let me start YouTube content creation. Let me also become an Instagrammer, and let me also have a startup of mine as well. So that
Right.
I'm hedging my risks, I'm diversifying my risks, and not identifying with one thing in particular. Is
Right.
that what you're essentially trying to say of donning multiple hats in your life so that you're not associated with one thing in particular?
You are growing as a person. So this is like any other big company. If if you're a startup and your main product is just one, and for some reason that one product becomes irrelevant, then your startup shuts down. But if you look at Reliance or Tata, who over 10, 30, 40, 50 years have diversified so much that even if one entire industry shuts down, they still have so much investments in other industries. They can still survive. So as you grow as a human being, I think it is natural that you will evolve and expand into multiple factors, multiple areas. As a kid, maybe your only identity was that you are a good student,
Sure.
but gradually, you develop a hobby, you develop friends, you start doing other stuff. So you have been investing in other identities without knowing it. The problem is that sometimes you think that one of them is more important than all of the others, and if that one thing gets destroyed, you will question yourself. So you need to ask yourself about this, that have I put in equal amounts into everything, or is one thing more important than the rest? And if so, accept that risk, that if something happens to that one identity, you will be in trouble.
Very interesting. I have a segue to make here,
Hmm.
because identity is also very, very strongly tied to someone very close to you in life. Let's say a
Hmm.
partner or a
Yeah.
spouse, and you make that person your central being of existence.
Right.
um, that comes at the exclusion of family, that comes at the exclusion of friends. People often say that, right? Like, I think when you become committed in a relationship, people often start forgetting their friends and they stop hanging out, and it comes
Yeah.
at the exclusion of family, giving them time as well.
Yeah.
This is a classic, at least in my opinion, in terms of understanding that you associate everything, you tie everything around your existence around that one person, and the moment
Right.
the one person walks away from your life, everything just crumbles.
Right.
I want to get this perspective from you in people perspective. How do I
Mhm.
diversify my risks?
So if you're talking of friends, I think we do diversify. We are aware that no one friend can fulfill all of your friendship requirements. So you might be somebody who likes to play FIFA on your PlayStation. You might be somebody who likes to go hiking or cycling. You might be somebody who likes board games, and you might not find one friend who likes all of it. So you have different friends, you have different groups. You have a clubbing group, or you have a poetry group, you have a hiking group, and so you do diversify. And if there is one particular friendship ends for whatever reason, you are sad, but then you're not devastated because you have other friends. Romantic friendships, romantic relationships are different. Romance itself is different, love is different. Love does make you, for the lack of a better word, idiotic. You do start thinking irrationally, because that's the way that love is designed. We quite literally, the prefrontal cortex and the thinking part of the brain gets suspended, and everything becomes more instinctive, impulsive. And the other thing that happens is that as you fall more and more in love, you start thinking of the other person as a part of you. Quite literally, our brain cannot tell the difference between them and self and them. So when they get hurt, you get hurt. When they get happy, you get happy. So it's the highest level of empathy. So when they break up after that, it's like a part of you is being taken away. And again, I love this segue, because we come back to identity. Who are you, and who are you independent of your relationship? So if you've completely mixed your identity with the presence of somebody else, uh, then you run the risk of them going away, and then you literally getting broken in half. On the one hand, it's a great feeling to be in love so much, but everything that good comes with a price. So you do run that risk of really getting your heart broken. If you are a detached person, you could make the argument that, so what? It's an experience. It's a human experience to get your heart broken. Go through it. Feel that pain, feel that emotion, and you will recover. You will come out of it. Unfortunately, not everybody can be that detached, and there are people who actually do get traumatized by a heartbreak. So if you are one of those people, then handle love with care. Like don't fall that much in love.
Well, that, oh, don't fall that much in love apparently. Okay, so there are barriers and stages to falling in love according to Dr. Siddharth Warrior in the house. But one of the things that is a constant challenge is self regulation, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we are in that position to self regulate how much we feel for someone.
Mm-hmm.
When you say that you fall for someone really hard very quickly versus someone who's very logical, rational, like you said, the
Mm-hmm.
detached kind of a personality who can
Yeah.
take a step back and get a perspective whether am I really, she is really, or he is really for me, is
Right.
a whole spectrum of feeling someone is going through. um,
Hmm.
the earlier point you mentioned about, and I want to circle back to that point, that tied in with self awareness, is
Mm-hmm.
about, are you the kind of person who can regulate your emotion? Are you aware of where you are falling into, with who you are falling into, with the kind of people, even with friends? Can you detach and break away bonds as well? Comes at a price. I don't
Hmm.
think, we, however, I mean, there is obviously a small percentage of people who are extremely rational and extremely aware of it, but the majority are
Hmm.
ready to pay the price for a heartbreak, ready to
Hmm.
pay the price for what actually someone goes through when you are subject to absolute bouts of loneliness,
Yeah.
anxiety, because the person is not around you.
Hmm.
Is there a mechanism to deal with that? I know this is post the issue, right? I'm not talking
Yeah.
while you are going through it. I mean, if everyone was aware that, oh, this is how I should deal, okay, then I'm well armed. I can do whatever I want to. But
Yeah.
sadly, it doesn't work that way, right? I think you fall head over heels for someone, you just go with all the flow.
Yeah.
And this has become even more particular because, especially when the apps, the dating apps that are prevalent right now, it
Right.
has made connecting so much more easier. Uh,
Yeah.
and it has skipped the trickier parts of, courting
Yeah.
and taking the effort and stuff. Everything is very easy accessible. Also, then
Yeah.
the pain also comes at a price too.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on this, Siddharth, about how to navigate this pain, this loneliness, this anxiety someone goes through?
So there are a couple of things. There are many situations in life that you're not prepared for. All right. So I always think of sports. So we look at sports. We applaud cricketers or footballers for their skill. So if I take the example of, say, Cristiano Ronaldo. All right. So he's running with the ball at his feet, and there are four defenders coming at him, and somehow he is able to find his way through it, and he goes on and he scores. Right. Um, Put yourself in that position. There is no way you do that. Not a chance. You will you will not be able to handle that many impulses at the same time. Like, you have to look at the ball at your feet, you have to look at where all the defenders are, and at the same time you have to maintain your calm. There are 100,000 fans screaming at you,
A
and you
lot of
still
external
have to,
stimuli, basically.
lot of external stimuli, a lot of internal stimuli. Your heart rate is so high, you're so anxious. To be able to navigate through that is very, very difficult. The reason that he's able to do it is, A, of course, he's naturally talented, but B, also because he's done it so many, 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 many times. He has practiced that so many, many, many times. I think all human emotions can be dealt better if you are under supervised practice. The reason some people cannot handle heartbreak is because, even if they've been through a heartbreak before, they don't look at it like a learning opportunity. They look at it like a very personal affront, which is, if you think about it, is fundamentally flawed. The whole point of self growth is that I did something, I didn't get the outcome that I was desiring. What did I do wrong? Let me change my behavior. So just like Cristiano trying out his first overstep and probably falling on the ball, if he would have taken that personally, he would have never gone ahead and, become who he is. But then in sports, it's easy to understand.
True.
Somehow all the metaphors make a lot of sense in sports. Maybe it is time to start thinking of love as an adventure sport, because that's what it is.
Okay, okay,
And
but
everything starts falling into place.
with that perspective, there is a reason why so many people tell that, oh, I'm attracting the same kind of person and again that I'm trying to avoid. And I
Yeah.
think that essentially sort of circles back to the same point that when it comes to self growth, personal growth, you are not learning from the experiences, and I could be entirely wrong when I say that as well. But
Mm,
just from my limited understanding of things, one of the reasons you sort of attract the same pattern of people in your lifestyle is also because you are the same person, whether in the
correct.
previous relationship or this relationship. Nothing has
Correct.
essentially changed except the person that you're bringing into your life. um, from that angle, when someone understands the trigger, that
Mm,
if for example short temper is like a classic issue with a lot of people, right?
right.
You understand that that's a pattern of you, that's an impediment, and that
Right.
causes harm to other person and to yourself as well.
Right.
um, that comes with a lot of self-awareness, right, Siddharth,
Right.
to be able to
Yeah.
understand a where you are from. Can
Mm.
this be practiced? Is it a muscle that can be practiced, and can someone snap out of these triggers, these patterns?
Yeah. Absolutely. It is, self-awareness is a habit. The more you practice it, or the easier it becomes. So
Hmm.
in the middle of an emotion, you should be able to just take a step back, and while you are angry, while you are shouting, you should be able to just take a step back and think, okay, wait, what am I doing? Why am I angry? What did this person say that triggered me so much? Why is my limbic system so active? Why am I so defensive right now? You should be able to do that. The problem is that people don't practice it. So if you practice it and you do it 3 times, the fourth time it becomes natural. So ideally there should be like an alarm that goes on your smartwatch or something. If you're angry, just an alarm, just a reminder, just something that you have set for yourself. Nobody else is telling you, because when you're angry, the entire world is your enemy except you yourself. So if you could somehow remember that, wait, you're angry, snap out of it, and you make that into a habit, 100% it can happen, just like any other thought exercise.
There is this, I mean, this is a tangential point, but there is a concept by Nassim Taleb.
Hmm.
I'm not if you sure if you're aware of this concept called anti-fragility.
Yeah, yeah, of
Now,
course.
so this is such an interesting point that if someone goes through an issue, a major
Hmm.
trauma, a major problem in life,
Yeah,
it's a classic thing that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That sort
yeah,
of encapsulates what anti-fragility is, because I think when someone goes through a traumatic experience, a difficult experience, they
yeah,
are better able to handle it rather than crumble the next time an issue comes in. But I think
right.
what happens with us is that we make our issue, and I say this from personal experience,
Yeah,
is that once we are faced with at least a very difficult situation in life, we make
yeah,
that the barometer of understanding our threshold of pain. That we can
yeah,
only suffer this much. If it was a little more, man, I will crumble. But the
right.
fact that you were able to persevere through so much of pain has actually made you resistant for that pain. Now it's only higher up from there. It's not going to lower.
This brings me to this realization I've had, that people who have lived through and survived through trauma are better off than people who've had no trauma at all.
Oh, absolutely.
So the aim
Absolutely.
in life is not to really avoid trauma, which is actually not possible. There will be challenges, and trauma is a very subjective thing. So what is trauma to you when you are 3 is is nothing. Is you won't even register it when you're 30. But suppose you haven't gone through that trauma when you were 3. Your mom not buying you a chocolate could be a trauma for you when you're 30. I mean, it just sounds ridiculous, but
No, it's
you
actually
understand.
true.
Yeah, everything, every single experience where you have met resistance from life could potentially be a trauma, until you get over it. And then it's just life. It's just something that you know how to handle. And this is across the board. It applies everywhere. Every single thing that you come across is something that you have to learn to navigate. and other people have learned to navigate it, others have not. You could be either one. If you've learned to navigate it, it just becomes part of your repertoire now. Now you know, all right, if this happens, I know what to do. And that's how you move forward in life. And this is endless, which is why I look at anyone in the world, the most famous motivational speaker in the world has a limit, has a trauma limit. Something can break them. Everybody has that. The only thing is, where is that? Like, how far beyond is that? And our probably the only real purpose in life is to just be comfortable, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
keep expanding your comfort zone.
Yeah. Also, I think expanding a comfort zone, in addition to that, I'll probably rephrase it and tell that I think you've got to keep on increasing a threshold of pain. If you
Yep.
can increase the threshold of pain, you can survive the most monstrous situation. Now, with that being said, you mentioned correctly that everyone has a threshold of a certain pain, the limit till they reach a certain breaking point. I
Right.
think if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Again, it holds so much value is because essentially you were able to survive that pain. Yes, there is PTSD. There are ways that you don't know how to recover from that pain. Absolutely, that needs correction. That needs help. That needs external support. But with that being said, if you were able to survive so much, chances are that you are at least better positioned than someone who's never been through that sort of pain. I read
Yep.
this. I was reading this article somewhere which said that I think in one of the armies, whether Australian army or the Israeli army, when they see your resume, if you've never failed in your life, they don't accept you.
Mm.
They don't
Yep.
want an impeccable resume. They don't want a top-notch resume. They want you to be in a position where you failed, so that you know
Yep.
how to bounce back. Because
Yeah.
being in a situation where you know how to bounce back is the ability to survive and get up and then fight again the next day.
Yeah. One misunderstanding that I think people get from a conversation like this is that they think it means to chase pain.
Oh yeah, true,
And
true. We're not
it
getting at that.
doesn't mean that. It
We're
doesn't
not
mean
getting at that.
that.
Very true.
Life is painful enough.
Yeah.
Just your regular, routine, normal life is challenging enough for most of us. The point that I'm trying to make is that how well do you navigate your everyday life decides whether your everyday life becomes traumatic or everyday life becomes routine. So just keep getting better at navigating your everyday life, and that's all. So you don't have to go to the gym and lift 500 pounds, because you will never need to lift 500 pounds. But you better be good at lifting 50 to 100 pounds, because that is a situation that can come. You know, your foot can get stuck under a cupboard and you may have to lift that cupboard, and you don't know how heavy that cupboard could be. These are things that could happen in your everyday life. And if it happens, and if you're not prepared, that could be a traumatic event. But if you were prepared, it wouldn't be a traumatic event. No, all we're trying to do is to reduce the chances of you going through an event that could traumatize you. So for that, you have to prepare yourself.
And I think I always love an example that involves a workout, a reference, a metaphor to workout, because it is the most classic gradual way of building your capabilities. I
Yeah.
think you can never go in the gym, like you said, lift a 500 or do a deadlift of 500 kilos, right, pounds. It will never
Right.
be happening. But it
Right.
will happen if you once do the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, and then I think that's
Right.
exactly what we're trying to get at. That with life, I think um, the threshold to pain, the ability to absorb pain or challenges or happiness for that matter, increases
Yeah.
only in step by step processes. I think if you're looking at those massive leaps of jumps that will make you this strong, it will generally not come in. It will come at a
Yeah.
very heavy price, is what I'm trying to understand. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Siddharth, because I
Mm.
think gradual is the way to go rather than sort of absorbing everything in one go and telling that this is how life should happen. Because living in the external world of content creators, validation, art, and the fame, it can seem that, oh, virality, 2 million views, 3 million views, oh my god, I am putting out so much material. It's still not sort of hitting the place that I want to. But here there is
Yeah.
someone who's made a average-ish reel, but he's got millions of views. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, man. Like I'm not at that place yet.
Right. Right. It's so that's the thing of having one single variable for comparison. Because if it comes down to just a number, it can get pretty confusing. Because then you judge yourself with just that number, and it is to the limbic system, it's all just a bunch of gestures and signals. We have to understand that. So the limbic system doesn't really understand numbers as much. It just understands relative importance. So we know that 1 million is better than 100,000. We know that 100,000 is better than 10,000. But why is it better? What is the meaning of it? The limbic system doesn't really get all that. It just has a sense of superior and inferior. That's it. Ki, oh, somebody is superior to me. So all of those feelings associated with looking at somebody superior will kick in, which is respect, awe, jealousy, anger, rage, greed. Like, oh, I want what they have. What do they have is not clear, because the limbic system doesn't think so much. It just goes through these very arbitrary, preconceived behavioral systems. Somebody's superior, I want this. Somebody's inferior, oh, this person doesn't really deserve my attention, or oh, they are reaching out to me, they should be kind to me, or they should be respectful towards me. It's just very vague. It doesn't think these things out. So it is part of your prefrontal cortex's responsibility to tell the limbic system to shut up. Somebody's number doesn't define them, just like your number doesn't define you. And your aim is to just get better. That's it. Nothing else really matters.
Yeah, I think also because numbers are such an absolute thing that it's easy to quantify and make
Yeah.
sense of. But the softer aspects of whether you're actually growing internally or not, whether you've
Yeah.
made one video better than the previous one, whether you are happy doing this, is not unfortunately quantifiable. So that gets left out in the process. But I think the point of this
Correct.
conversation was around self-awareness and being aware that uh, putting and controlling your variables is what you can make sense of.
Yeah.
Happiness and the numbers and the output that comes along with it is something that we don't have control over.
Yeah. Absolutely. It comes down to Bhagavad Gita. Just get better. Be good at your job and get better and better at it. And that's it. Don't think about anything else. It's all Maya.
कर्म किए जा फल की इच्छा मत कर. That's the line that goes along with this conversation.
Lovely.
Super Siddharth. So this has been such a great chat. Thank you once again for all these perspectives. It's been nothing but a delight chatting with you, brother.
Thank you, Hardik. This is absolutely amazing. I'm glad we got to do this.